Hello and welcome to today's Printing Impressions webinar, Taking the Risk Out of an UV LED Retrofit. My name is Dan Marks. I'm Senior Content Editor for Printing Impressions, and I'm delighted to be here for today's event. UV LED has made some interesting inroads into a number of areas of the printing industry, and I'm very interested in this topic. Before we get started, let me take a second to point out the resources widget at the bottom of your console. It looks like an open book. If you missed the tech tips that we're playing prior to the webinar, you can always click on that widget to access information on how to use the webinar resources. So after initial presentation by GEW coming up, we will convene a panel discussion to provide firsthand accounts of UV LED retrofits. It will include Nick Bova, owner of Push Solutions, Brad Flagg, president and owner of Push Solutions, Jennifer Heathcote, Business Development Manager for GEW, and David May, proprietor of Empress Litho. First, however, we have Robert Ray, Managing Director, Sales for GEW. Welcome, Robert. We're delighted to have you here.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for the introduction, Dan. Before today's discussion, I just wanted to provide some context to some of the main questions that our panel are going to be discussing, namely, what can LED retrofit do for a commercial print business? Who are GEW, as we're reasonably new into this market? Why trust us with your sheet-fed offset press? And importantly, in this market, how does our after-sales technology and service work? So thanks to Dan for the introduction, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion later between Jennifer, Dan, David, Brad, and Nick on their experiences of UV LED for their business and their experience with GEW. So before I dive into too much of the technology, I just wanted to talk about what are my top sort of reasons for taking on an LED retrofit in a commercial print business. And really it comes down to a few things. First of all, number one, quality. The quality of print that you can achieve with LED is far superior to that with a conventional ink. And without the sinking of the ink into absorbent substrates like paper, you get much more vibrant colors, and that can increase your color gamut. And importantly, it can really increase the consistency of color that you get from job to job, week to week. It's one of the top reasons customers retrofit their machines with LED technology. The second is new products. I've got here some material printed PET, metallized polyester, all sorts of different materials that are just not possible, plastics that are not possible to print with conventional inks. And for a commercial printer, that allows you to diversify your product, move into and offer products that are higher margin, and also in new areas of packaging and print that just weren't accessible. And you can do all that on the same machine just by retrofitting. And the third is productivity. LED inks cure immediately in split second, and that gives you a much faster turnaround. You can take your product straight to bindery, cut it, bind it, and ship it immediately. Reduce your work in progress, which is a big cost. And without the marking and scratching, because the ink is dry when it goes into the perfecting mechanism or into the delivery, you don't get this marking and scratching, which reduces the waste that you see. And finally, less maintenance of your drying system and of your press as a whole. Not so much washing up because of the UV inks, and no spray powder, and LEDs are just a simple on-off light switch at the end of the day. So those are some of the big reasons why we see customers switching to LED, and I'd encourage you to ask questions to our panel today to hear about their experiences of that for their business. So that brings me on to GEW. who are GEW? A lot of you may not have heard about us. Well, we are one of the biggest UV curing companies in the world. I often say we're the biggest UV company you've never heard of. We've got over 30 years experience manufacturing UV only for the graphic arts market. And over that time, we've fitted more than 21,000 printing machines with GEW UV technology. And we believe that's more than any other supplier in this graphic arts market. And what we do at GEW is provide great engineering, but at a fair price. And that's really allowed us to become a very big global player in the, especially in the web market. And with the advent of LED 4 or 5 years ago, we entered the sheet fed arena really for the first time. And with our volume and with this philosophy of great engineering at a fair price, we're finding that we're able to help change the economics of an LED retrofit for many customers around the world, and it's one of the reasons we're seeing such big growth in GEW's sheet-fed business. So that's just a little bit about GEW turning over more than 50 million. I'm part of the family that owns GEW. It's still 100% family-owned today. So onto the product, some brief comments about the product. Our LED product is called LEOLED. And we have a very simple concept. Engineering is about keeping things simple. And we make LEOLED one high-powered lamp for all our different applications. Whether it's web, sheet-fed, industrial, specialty, it doesn't matter. We use the same LEOLED product. Instead of having multiple products for different applications, different BOMs, different assembly lines, different products, confusing for customers, we make one product, and the only question you need to ask is how many LEOLED modules do I need to add to my array in order to achieve the performance on my press? And that makes it very simple. One for a standard application, two for some medium, mid-range applications, and for coating at 16, 18,000 sheets, you might need three. But the difference with GEW is we make this lamp in very high volume, by the 1,000. And that means we get two things. First, high reliability. And this is most important in the sheet-fed market. I call it the Toyota effect, this relentless drive for zero defects that you can achieve when you build something in high volume and see all the tiny, tiny things which can result in unreliability down the line. And you just cannot do that if you're making 100, 200 lamps a year. It's just not possible. And GEW make it in volume. The second is cost. We have large volume, good buying power, very efficient production lines, and that means that we're able to deliver a very reliable, very high performance product, but at a cost which is affordable. And that enables us to deliver more UV dose per dollar than any of our competition. And that's what I like to say, highest performance at a fair market price. And that's something which in sheet-fed we feel and we know, our customers tell us, has been missing. And I think it's quite unique. The second thing for the sheet-fed market, which is unique to this market, is the lamp, because it's the same, can be moved between any position, perfecting, interdeck, delivery, even between machines where we've got customers doing this. You can set up your machine in the most flexible way you want. You can configure for any particular job. It's a quick, easy 2-3 minute job to move a lamp from one position to the other. It's very compact, so it can fit in any position. It's the most flexible configuration you can achieve, and it gives you the ability to have flexibility and the high performance when and where you need it. So that's sort of a highlight of the product. One big question is, why trust GEW with your press? Well, we've been engineering UV for more than 30 years. We've got a team upstairs of more than 20 mechanical design engineers, and all they do is integrate our UV curing systems onto printing machines. That's it. We only make UV curing systems, and we've been doing it and integrated on more than 21,000 printing machines. So basically, if it's there, if there's a machine, we can fit to it. We have the capability to do it. Any machine, Heidelberg, Komori, KBA, Mann Roland, RMGT, you name it, we can fit to it. We can handle custom floor plate modifications, sheet handling solutions. And what I wanted to highlight was to show the professionalism with which we do our engineering. If we don't know a machine, as we don't some in Sheetfed, what we'll do is we'll come to your press with a laser measurement device, and we will scan your machine down to a single micron. We'll take that 3D model and we'll model your press in 3D, and we'll take our UV, design an integration for it, and design everything in 3 dimensions before we go to manufacturing. And then what this means is when we get to site, we can install professionally, right first time, in a timely manner, in a way that really sets us apart. And hopefully, you can hear more about that today as well. But it's a unique thing that we do here, and I think it highlights the level of engineering that we have here at GEW. And the final thing to talk about is service response. In the Sheetfed market, downtime is a killer. You have to be able to respond fast, and we can do that with some very unique technology we call remote monitoring. Every single lamp that we've shipped since 2018 and everything in the future is connected to the internet, and it communicates with us every single second. We're monitoring now live over 21,000 lamps around the world, and not just live, we are recording all of this data. This is a screenshot from our system on a machine 2 years ago. I look back just 2 years and I can see exactly how it was running on Tuesday, the 1st of November in 2018. We can see the voltage, the current, the temperature, every time the lamp switched on and off, the speed, the floor plates being raised, anything we need to know that machine is running correctly. And what that gives us is the ability to respond more precisely and faster than anyone else in the market, because we can see exactly what's going on across borders, across languages, and we can see the settings, we can update settings remotely. And one of the nice things about it is every month you get a report of your system for free, telling you the productivity, how much you printed, and everything that's going on, energy use, etc., on your machine. And this, really, I think, gives us the ability to respond faster and more precisely than anyone in the world, because of the amount of data that we see here. And finally, just for those customers in the US, as I know that's probably the majority of the audience, GEW Incorporated is a completely separate organization based in Ohio. We have 24-hour, 7-day technical support. We have 7 full-time service technicians who travel the US servicing machinery. And we have a full complement and large stock of spare parts held in Ohio, ready to ship next day. So we can support customers in the US as an independent US organization. And that's really important for our customers in the US to be able to trust a company manufacturing in the UK. So we work very hard to make sure that's the case. So just a quick summary of our product. What we're doing, I feel, GEW in our push to Sheetfed, is we're bringing the value of volume to Sheetfed in a way that it hasn't been done before. We have a simple modular lamp to avoid confusion. We have volume manufacturing, which gives us high performance, but at very, very good reliability. We have a modular lamp array for flexibility and high performance where it's needed. We have Internet of Things remote monitoring to give us the fastest, most precise service response. And we can retrofit very professionally with a huge amount of experience and capability in the engineering team here. And just as an example, we're very proud of the fact that RMGT, the innovators of LED in this market, after only 2 years of GEW shipping systems into Sheetfed, RMGT chose us as their LED supplier of choice all around the world when they discontinued Panasonic, and they had the choice, of anyone around the world. We're very proud of that. Doesn't mean we just work with RMGT, but we're very proud of that association, and I think it speaks volume to the product that the team here at GEW have achieved. So that's all I wanted to say today. Just a brief introduction from the UK. I hope you enjoyed the discussion with our customers, Jennifer and Dan. And over to you in the US. I look forward to all the questions and what everybody has to say today. So Dan, thanks very much. Dan? Hello?
Dan, I think you're on mute.
My apologies there. Sorry about that. We're going to convene our discussion panel. The topic at hand is, what can a UV LED retrofit do for your business? And I'd like to start, I guess, with Nick and Brad. What impact has UV LED had on your business in terms of quality of the product you produce and also the efficiency of your production? What's your experience been?
Okay, I'll start on the operational side, and then Nick can talk a little bit more on the sales side. But from an operational side, exactly what Robert had said, we are seeing job throughput twice as fast, if not 3 times as fast as we saw traditional offset. Some of the great things that we really enjoy is no offsetting, no scratching or scuffing in post-press operations. That is just a huge advantage. So us in the offset industry taking on LED. We've been using LED since 2016, and it's been an absolute game changer. As an owner of a business in a very competitive marketplace, I wouldn't run an offset press without LED UV. I wouldn't buy one. If I have an existing press on my floor, I would definitely be looking into GEW and what they bring to the table. It will change your business. It will definitely help your operation from a bottom line standpoint. We really love what it does. The waiting time, the less powder, the environmental effects around the shop have been tremendous for us, and took Push Solutions, a relatively young company, and skyrocketed our sales in a matter of 2 or 3 years and doubled the size of the company. I think, Nick, you can talk a little bit from on the sales side, the effect that you've seen, but it's been great for our company.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, all those things that he just rattled off obviously lend themselves to quality and the production of the better piece. Ultimately, the quality is kind of a relative term. I just scratched down some quick notes here. The biggest thing that helped me sell was the consistency, and we have a lot of program accounts, consistent color. By putting this in, it made our entire plant UV top to bottom. So we had redundancy. We could flop back and forth between presses, and the quality from month to month was consistent. And that was something that we struggled with before. So you could see a better product, definitely produce a better product more easily. But what we were able to give to our customers was that consistency. And ultimately that translated to confidence for me to go out and sell more programs and talk to that, how we're able to achieve that now with better equipment and stuff.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. David, what new business has UV LED opened for your company that was previously inaccessible with other technologies?
Thanks, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone, from sunny London, or afternoon from London. LED, interesting, really, because when I saw this question, I started thinking about why did I go into LED and where am I? Because I thought originally that's a pretty odd question, but thinking about it, when I look back, why did we embrace LED all those years ago? 2017, we started thinking about it. 2018, we had it put in. At Empress, we run 2 6-color Heidelberg CD102 presses. Both presses are 2000 technology, so one's 2003, one 2004. And we were thinking about buying an Indigo, HP Indigo. We were thinking about buying a B2 HP Indigo because as a B1 printer, A3 doesn't really fit into our workflow. We were under margin pressure from people doing stuff quicker, faster. People wanted product turnaround really quickly, but we had 2 very expensive printing machines. We don't put high volume through our press. Us is about quality. We deal with designers, advertising agencies. So we deal with the demented, the deluded, the demanding, who want the impossible. And for us, it's not 4-color process. For us, we do 4 colors, but we do an awful lot of specials, which is why we have 6-color CDs. So why go down LED? Why not buy an HP Indigo? And that was a big question for us. So we started looking at LED. What we wanted to do really was we wanted to extend the life of our equipment. We wanted to utilize our existing plant because we're set up to print B1. So we needed the smallest sheet size we could effectively plug into our factory was B2. So the easy choice was to buy a B2 digital device, Fuji Indigo. We then looked at LED. I went to a couple of shows. We saw LED. We saw LED running. And I thought, this changes what we do. It means no spray powder, instant wash up, high productivity, and above all, the sheet comes off dry. So now we can print in the morning, finish in the afternoon, deliver that day if we need to. Previously, without that, we couldn't because it just wasn't quite dry enough. So we were looking to increase our productivity. We were also looking to increase the utilization of our equipment and perhaps to respond faster to customers. So that's why we went down the LED route. And for us, what it is, because we run two machines, we decided we'd put one in LED and we'd leave one in conventional. And then the long-term plan was to put both into LED. But since then, we've had, things have changed. The whole world has changed under coronavirus. So for us, LED has changed our business. Coronavirus has also changed our business. And so originally we went in to do jobs quickly for the entertainment and all that sort of market. Under COVID, that's disappeared. But what has happened is we've ended up, because we run Heidelberg CDs, they're cart diameter machines, we've had an awful lot of people come out of the woodwork who are looking for people to print specialist stuff, not in 4-color process. And because we're happy to do that, our whole business has sort of changed over the last 18 months. And now we do some very interesting packaging work, but we also still do a lot of work for designers. And LED has helped us attack that market. It has reduced our cost. It has increased our productivity, and it's kept us going. Bluntly.
That's great news. I'd like to toss it back to Nick and Brad. Sort of the elephant in the room here for most companies looking at LED retrofits is the impact of LED ink prices. What impact has LED ink prices had on your business and the ROI of the system? Have they been a barrier? And if so, how have you overcome that?
Again, I'll address that from an ROI standpoint, from an operational side. Nick's got a great discussion on how it affects him and on the pricing and working those numbers on the streets with his clients. But from a operational standpoint, the turn time and getting those jobs off your floor and delivered, like David was talking about, by the end of the day means you can turn that invoice over tomorrow. Jobs that are sitting on your floor are your cash flow, and the faster those jobs get off your floor and in your customers' hands mean you turn those jobs over faster, you start getting your cash in instead of waiting for it. You can shorten that cash cycle. It just makes you go on to the next job or the next investment. In the old way of doing it with offset, these jobs would sit sometimes for days before you can touch them. Then you had some problems potentially in the finishing operations, like I mentioned earlier, with some scratching and some damaging. And then all of a sudden, you got to reprint a cover to a book because we had some problems due to the heavy coverage. I haven't seen those types of problems ever since we put in LED. We basically have not lost a job because of an offsetting issue like I did with traditional printing years ago. So that's a huge return on investment that a lot of people don't talk about. It's easy to talk about the expensive ink potentially in LED, but nobody talks about the idea of not losing jobs to post-production problems that you may have. And the second thing is the ability now to produce higher value jobs on materials like plastics and synthetics that'll carry a bigger dollar volume or a bigger invoice that's going to go out to your client. We would have a very tough time running plastics and getting them through. Everybody remembers the days of running a plastic job and you put 3 sheets over here, 4 sheets over there, and you hope 3 days later it's dry and ready to post-press. Those are a non-existent situation for us now with LED. It's really opened up the world to high dollar volume jobs. And Nick can definitely talk about what he's seen when it comes to those types of projects.
Sure.
I
Nick?
don't have a ton to say on this. I get asked this question all the time. And on the sales side, we had to figure out how to estimate it correctly, figure out what the true costs were and how much ink is laid down, and get all those nuts and bolts figured out. But once that's in place, the ink is not even on my radar. And I mean that in the most positive way. I don't find it ever being cost prohibitive in a sale. There's special instances, special inks where we maybe have to have a conversation, but I would say that 85 to 90% of the work that we're running is process, and it just goes smoothly. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the ink cost is such a small percentage of the final sale that, you know, you're picking up other efficiencies through the process with this whole process, that it just kind of moves right through. It's really not on my radar at all. Once you figure it out, they do cost more, but I just don't really see it as that impactful on the sales side. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, how can upgrading to UV LED help prepare a company for the future?
Sure. Well, I think one of the major reasons that we need to take into consideration, in addition to what all the guys have said so far, is that all of the innovation is happening in LED today. It's in LED. It's not in mercury. It's not in conventional. So if you want to be aware of what is coming down the pipeline, you need to be working with LED today, or at least getting involved in it, because all the ink development, all the coatings development, all the press development, all the UV equipment development is happening in LED. The other thing that I would add is sustainability is becoming a big factor for all of us. And LED helps you deliver that sustainability message to your customers, to the brand managers. You know, LED consumes less electricity. There's process savings in your operating expenses. It also eliminates the use of mercury in the lamps. And that's very important to a lot of the converters and printers customers.
Okay, why don't we shift gears here and move on to our next discussion question, and that is, why trust GEW to retrofit your sheet-fed offset machinery? And I'd like to start, I guess, with David. We understand you had a challenge early on with your retrofit process where the UV LED curing system was put in a position that wasn't optimal once you started using it consistently. How did GEW rectify this issue for you, and how has the system worked since those changes were made?
Well, I'm here talking to you, so it obviously went well. It did go wrong. We were one of their early B1 conversions on a Heidelberg, and they put it in the wrong place. It was installed in the wrong place on the machine. But to be fair to GEW, they came in, they changed it. We knew we had a problem, and there wasn't really much. You know, yes, it took a bit of time. We were new to LED, but all I would say is, you know who to trust when things go wrong, and you know who the right supplier is and who's on your side, because you'll all have been there somewhere. You'll have something that goes wrong, and you'll have some suppliers who refer to the small print, and you'll have other people that sort of leave you high and dry, and then you'll have your favorite suppliers who will say, do you know what, that's wrong, I'm going to fix it. And GEW said exactly that to me. They fixed it, and now it's done exactly what I wanted it to do.
Okay. Jennifer, you have any brief comments on this situation?
Sure. You know, UV technology is transferable. Skills are transferable, right? And one thing that GEW brings to the table is that we understand UV curing. As Rob mentioned in the beginning, we're very good at engineering, manufacturing, delivering UV curing systems. And that's not components. That's an entire system meant to work together. And then we are experts in integration. And, you know, as David said, you know, there are things that are going to go wrong, but we're going to stand by you. We have an office here, regional office here in the US. We've got a full team of people here to support you prior to the sale, during the integration, and then following when you're actually up and running. We'll be here to take care of and assist you and guide you through any issues that may arise.
Okay. Yeah. Just following up on David's comment, it seems like it's not the fact that there was an issue; it's the response to the issue, and that's
Absolutely.
really where customer service
Yeah,
becomes valuable. Go ahead.
I would say, as a business owner, it's really important that your suppliers come and sort things out, and they don't try and hide behind small print or, oh, you didn't understand, or all the rest of it. We've all been here. We've all bought things. We've all bought things that were a good idea at the time, but I would say I would buy another one from them, and that says everything. If I'm prepared to buy another one because I could be quite difficult, it means they're very good.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we kind of add on that a little bit as well, I mean, LED technology is not new. I mean, the diodes have been evolving for 20 years. The systems have been evolving for sheet fed offset for 12 years. GEW got into sheet fed offset around, 2015. We've learned a tremendous amount over the last 20 years, but we're still learning. And we'll do everything we can to reduce risk, but sometimes things arise, and you should just be reassured that we'll be there to support you through those issues as they come up.
Okay. Let's pivot to Nick and Brad. What was the retrofit process like for your company from start to finish, and how long did that installation process take?
It was a very smooth process. We brought in a second press, another RMGT. It was a retrofitted a traditional offset press. The great thing for us is we have the proud moniker, I guess you could say, of being the first U.S. installation of a GEW system here in the U.S. So, being the first guy, you never want to be the first guy. For us, we were. And to be honest, I can say it was a smooth 5-day installation. They knew what they were doing. They were ready for it. In fact, we got the light that was supposed to go to somebody else because we needed it kind of urgently. So our equipment supplier in GEW sent it to us, and within 5 days, we had that lamp in. If you walked up to that press, you wouldn't even know that they were there. That press was even retrofitted. Everything from the covers that went on the press perfectly matched the press. All the wires, hoses were hidden away. The chiller and the power unit seamlessly integrated with the press. My pressman needed very little training on it because it integrates with an existing press that's standing on a floor somewhere so smoothly that we were up and running by day 5 doing production. Again, small little glitches, obviously, with the installation process that were handled immediately and quickly. I had really no issues come day 5 when we were going into full-on production. And that's a huge testament to GEW. We're a small company. We're close with our equipment manufacturers. It's good to hear what Robert, how he talks about the pride of GEW being a family-owned business. We're a small company. We trust our suppliers, and they've always come through. The equipment supplier that brought that GEW to the table to us is close with us. It was just a great installation for being the first one out of the gate in the U.S. into an offset press. I have nothing bad to say about what happened. So
that's great. Nick?
I don't have much to add. Brad handled that exclusively. It went extremely smoothly the whole time. I was out on the street selling, and I never heard anything coming out of the shop that there were problems. So he summed it up perfectly right there.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like that's the way you want it to work.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, no headaches. Jennifer, I know GEW is a UK-owned company. So why is it that American companies and other companies worldwide are trusting GEW to retrofit their equipment?
Sure. Well, so we are based in the UK. That's where our headquarters are. That's where all of our engineering and manufacturing executive management takes place. But we do have regional offices. We have a regional office in Germany as well as in the US. And we're available, 24/7 to support customers as their needs arise. So we do have the remote monitoring that helps us take care of customers globally. As Rob kind of illustrated in the beginning, is the ability to access that data remotely is a huge benefit to keeping customers up and running. Sometimes an issue arises where we do have to travel to the facility, and we have a full team of people to do that. But a lot of times the issues are minor. And if we can have visibility to what's happening on the press in real time, it allows us to be much more responsive. So customers work with GEW, for our engineering. The fact that we're designing complete systems, not just components, and we're designing those systems to integrate fully and seamlessly onto the press. And then we support them once they're running day-to-day operations.
Okay. Jennifer, just a quick question, just from press to press, like how different are these, and how customized do they need to be for specific machinery?
It varies across the board. I mean, application experience, you kind of get a really good understanding when you focus on very specific markets about what is needed. But the way different manufacturers use the technology is very different. I mean, speeds vary, mounting brackets vary, the substrates vary. There's lots of different ink and coating and adhesive suppliers around the various industries. And so understanding how to not only fit the lamps to the presses, but then what amount of UV power and in what configuration is required to keep people up and running. And that application knowledge is so very important when it comes to UV curing. There's value in the lamp, but the lamp itself without the full system doesn't really bring much to the table. Once you take the full system and then you incorporate that application and knowledge and support for each specific application, that's when you have value. It's when you can deliver value and the system becomes incredibly powerful.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, I'm going to stick with you here, and we're going to move to sort of the next segment of our discussion, which is why can GEW respond faster than any UV supplier to your service needs?
Sure.
And I guess the question is, we talked about the remote monitoring technology. Obviously, we heard about that. It offers them to provide really unparalleled technical service and expertise around the globe. How does this work to help printers operating in the United States? What is the service structure here in the States?
So one thing to keep in mind is that, we call this remote monitoring. It's a version of IoT. We do require that our power electrical cabinets be connected to the internet. We do not, under any circumstances, have any access to any of our customers' network or their systems. It's a complete push out to the cloud. So what happens is our system takes a complete snapshot of all the operating parameters. And about every 10 minutes, it pushes that snapshot of that data out to the cloud. It is only in the cloud that GEW has access to that data. So we're not dialing into anybody's, network. We're not dialing into the system. We're accessing everything in the cloud. And by monitoring that data, we can identify trends. We can be proactive about identifying, things that might be nearing, an end of a useful life. And we also capture that data and send out monthly reports to give a customer, an outside perspective about how their system is running, how much uptime they have, what energy consumption, what the characteristics of the lamp during their different jobs. And that's incredibly, incredibly powerful. So that gives us a lot of quick responsive capability to customers that we would not have without it. Somebody would have to get on a plane or troubleshoot via a phone call to try to get to the bottom of something.
Right. Nick and Brad, what's your company's experience with remote monitoring and of the support structure within the U.S. for your business?
Well, one, with the remote monitoring, I don't have a lot to say about it because we've had the GEW system for 3.5 years, and I haven't had a hiccup. So I get my monthly reports, I look them over, but from a standpoint of having problems that the system can identify for us, I mean, that's great, but it hasn't had to do that for me because my system has ran literally nonstop for the last 3.5 years. I do see the report. It does talk about when I'm printing, gives me the percentage of time I'm idle and when I'm offline. And I can definitely put in front of my pressman the idle time that it's showing me. Why am I not printing during that time?
Right.
But from a standpoint of finding problems, it's a great security blanket to have that I've got somebody watching our machine throughout the day, 24 hours a day when we're running that press. But from a standpoint of me having issues, I haven't had any issues with the lamp. And right now, I love the reports coming in every month, timely, right to my email. I don't have to ask for them or request them or go online to find them. They come right to me. So that's from that standpoint, the system is absolutely great, and I'm glad it's there for us.
Okay, Nick?
And if I can add one more comment too, those
Yeah, sure.
comments are fantastic. You know, the promise of LED is uptime, right? I mean, LEDs are solid state semiconductors. They are meant to go on the press, turn on and off when you want them, and run without issue. They provide incredible process control because they're always doing what they want them to do. But as I mentioned earlier, LED has been evolving for 20 years. For those of you who've been paying attention to this market for 20 years, you may have heard of issues in the industry where, well, that LED lamp was promised to last 20, 30,000 hours and it blew up after 2. You know, there are those stories out there, those bad experiences in years past, but the technology has evolved to the point, just as we're hearing from Push Solutions and Impress Litho, the technology is to the point today where it is reliable. The remote monitoring is there when we need it, but the goal is to not have to use it. And I think we're getting to that point with LED technology.
Okay. And then David, how has the service and sales team worked for you throughout your time working with GEW?
Superbly. We're about an hour away from GEW. We need someone, they'll pop down and see us. But as Brad said earlier, it doesn't go wrong. It's simply there. It's just there. It's on, and it's working. And we see somewhat. We'll have a service every year or something on the system, and that it really is as simple as that. The maintenance on it is very simple. The minders have got used to it. It's just an extension of the machine, really. And you don't. And I think, as Brad said earlier, you just don't even know it's there anymore. You just get so used to having it.
Okay. Very good. Before we move on to the questions that have been submitted by our audience today, I have just a follow-up for Jennifer. Can you just summarize the reasons GEW is well placed to take the risk out of the LED?
Absolutely.
retrofits?
Absolutely. So navigating technological change always has some element of risk. That risk could be real, or it could be just a matter of perception, just because of your unfamiliarity with the technology. You know, while it's not possible to eliminate all risk completely, I mean, we don't have those situations where all risk goes away, but what we can do is reduce that risk. And we do that through education, you know, us giving webinars, you know, publishing papers, giving presentations at conferences, just to educate the industry on where the technology stands today. But a key part of it is hearing firsthand from people such as Push Solutions and Impress Litho as they've gone through this process and what their experience was. And then picking your supply chain partners. I mean, one of the best things you can do to ensure and reduce risk is rely on valuable partners such as GEW that will be there with you every step of the way. Supply the complete system, oversee the integration, make sure everything's seamless, and then stand by your side as you continue to use our equipment in your applications and your printing processes as you move forward.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to some of the audience questions that we received. First one is, I guess I would throw this out to both Robert and Jennifer. The question is, can you describe the conversion process? What takes place? Does it involve rollers, you know, blankets, other things? What does it look like?
So yes, there are some things that have to change. The chemistry of UV inks, both UV inks and UV LED inks, are different from conventional inks. And so you do have to change some components on the press. You need to make sure that your blankets are compatible. There are blankets that will work for both UV and non-UV processes, but components that were designed for strictly conventional need to be changed. You need to work with your formulators, whether it's an ink or a coating. You need to work very closely with your formulators to understand what SKUs that you're using need to be changed and are available in an LED option, your fountain solution. But there's not a whole lot of things, but you just need to go through the list, work with us at GEW, work with your formulation suppliers, work with your consumable suppliers, and just take us step by step, go through and understand what that transition is.
Okay, Robert, anything to add there?
Yeah, only from the perspective of the actual, UV system itself. The way a retrofit process works at GEW is, tell us your machine, tell us, we discuss where you might want those lamps and in what configuration. And once you order the system, if we don't know your machine, we would scan your machine with our 3D laser scanner. If we do, we already have drawings for the press, then we would already know how to integrate the lamps into each position. Then a design and engineering process takes place at GEW, and at the end of that, or towards the end of that, you'll be given layouts, you'll be given asked for confirmation on where those things are going to go, where the cabinets are going to sit, where the HMI, the machine interface is going to sit, where the chiller is, how long all the cables are. All of that is signed off by you as a customer before we come and install it. And then, GEW, like Jen said, it's a turnkey solution. It's everything you need. The mounting brackets, the lamp, the chiller, the cabinet, all of the shipping included, the installation and the training on site. And while, the project includes more than the UV, like Jen said, inks, rollers, getting used to printing with LED, GEW, we have a large range of partners that we work with. We have a lot of, people in the industry, and that we can put you in touch with to help guide and support you through the process, because we understand, the project is about more than just putting some lamps on your machine.
Right. Next question I'd like to offer first, I guess, to David and then to Nick and Brad. But have you realized electrical cost savings from the system? And if so, were you able to get credits from your electricity supplier or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. The lamp doesn't use an awful lot of electricity, but the downside to that is probably the machine's a bit more productive than it used to be, so I'm using more electricity.
Okay.
So, I don't worry about electric cost. It's not a major factor. It's rather like ink and other bits and pieces. For us, it's the value of what you're putting through the press and getting the right price for it. So I wouldn't get too hung up about the cost of electricity. That's not what LED is about.
Okay. And as I consider this question, it's almost more from the standpoint of somebody who's coming from, let's say, a mercury vapor lamp UV setup to UV LED.
Fine. We used to have an infrared dryer on one of our presses, and that was eye-wateringly expensive to run. So this is phenomenally cheaper. I don't think it's made much of a difference to our electricity bill.
Got it. Nick and Brad, any quick comments on that?
Yeah, same thing. We've seen just a minimal increase in electricity, but it comes from because we're running our press a lot more. And ever since we've got our second press on the floor, the increase is pretty much coming because I'm just running another printing press. But that first year with LED UV, again, I didn't even see much of an uptick whatsoever from the use of our LED lamp. So,
okay.
Dan, there's maybe just one comment on that is, Push and Empress are obviously commercial offset printers. If you're a packaging printer looking at going to LED and you already have UV lamps on your press, then, energy savings, even in America where energy costs are rather low, you could be looking at $40 to $80, $100,000 saving per year by switching to LED. You're talking about an 80% reduction in energy. And more importantly, probably for packaging companies, is the reduction in CO2 and, big big corporate companies who have visions for CO2 and carbon footprint reduction. Well, LED really does help with that in the packaging market in a way that, is very different to what we're talking about here in commercial.
Okay, thanks, Robert. I'll send this one to both you and to Jennifer as well. But what kind of maintenance needs to be done to the lamp systems, and how often do they need to be maintained?
So one of the benefits of LED is that there is very little maintenance. It's not maintenance free, but there is reduced maintenance. The main thing that we need to do, we don't really run across this in commercial printing, with sheet fed offset as much. Some other industries run across it. Whereas if you get ink on the front of the LED lamp, which has a quartz window between the diodes and the substrate, that can be cleaned easily with a razor blade and a little bit of a lightly moist cloth with some isopropyl alcohol. It's very easy to clean. We don't see that very much in commercial printing just because of the way the presses are designed, but keeping that front glass clean. And then the number one aspect for longevity of your LED system is cooling, cooling, cooling. We have designed our lamp heads such that the thermal transfer away from the diodes is very well engineered. We've selected a chiller or a water-water exchanger to keep that heat on the back side of the LEDs away from the press. It is your responsibility as a user to make sure that chiller is maintained. It has the proper mixture of glycol, corrosion inhibitor, and water, and that reservoir is filled to the level that it needs to be and is operating at the correct temperature. If you do that, the LED systems will last a very, very, very long time, 20, 30, 40,000 hours and more.
Okay, let's continue with the heat issue. This person is asking, do LEDs get hot? Obviously, there's a chilling system, a cooling system to deal with that. But in terms of, let's say, printing thin film plastics or something like that, optimally, what is the temperature at the during curing on the substrate? So
maybe just on that, Dan, there's two very important things. One is when you talk about heat, the LEDs themselves are relatively cool, 50, 60 Celsius. Jen, you'll have to do the conversion. But they're cool. They're very cool. And the radiated heat from the LEDs is going to be next to nothing. The issue is there's an awful lot of UV light which comes out of the LEDs, and that gets absorbed by your substrates, and it heats the substrates up, as does the curing reaction of the inks. So LED is vastly, vastly cooler than an infrared system or a traditional arc lamp UV system. And you can process quite thin, plastic materials down to, easily 50 microns or so without really requiring any substrate, cooling at all. But if you're talking, in the web world, we get down to, shrink films, but you're not printing that on these types of machines. Jen, I don't know if you've got anything to add on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when for those of you that have used either infrared dryers or standard mercury arc lamps, the big component of thermal transfer is the infrared wavelengths that come out of those devices. LEDs do not emit infrared wavelengths at all. We are completely in the UV, just on the edge of the visible spectrum. But that said, ultraviolet wavelengths of light are still energy. The idea or the goal is for that energy to go all into the chemistry and drive that reaction. But whatever energy the chemistry doesn't use is going to be absorbed by the substrate and the surrounding machine components. And when that happens, it does convert to thermal energy. It is a fraction of the energy compared to an infrared dryer or a mercury arc lamp. There's no extraction on an LED system, so you don't have to pull that energy, that heat, that thermal energy away from the press. And there's no ozone with LEDs, so you don't have to exhaust that outside your facility.
Okay. We have a couple different questions on inks. One is rather short, and the other one is a little longer. So we'll start with the short one because it may lead us into the second one. The first question is, can I run any UV inks with LEDs?
Can you run any UV inks with LEDs? I would say if the inks are formulated for LED, you can run them with a UV LED curing system. The question always becomes, how fast can you run that on press? And that's where UV LED curing systems diverge from each other. While most LEDs are spec'd by the wavelength, be it 385, 395, or 405, as well as the peak irradiance or intensity, very few people talk about the total delivered energy. The more delivered energy means the faster you can run that press. Rob had some slides at the beginning of the webinar where he showed how we can integrate 1, 2, or 3 lamps in series to provide additional energy for when people want to go faster. So I would say that if an ink is formulated for LED, yes, it will cure with an LED system. Not all LED systems on the market are the same. And so where people often see inks not curing, it's because it's a mismatch between the LED system and the way it was integrated onto the press for the speeds that they want to achieve.
The other thing, Dan, I don't know if this was the other angle of the question, which is obviously the UV arc lamp inks have been available for 40, 50 years. Those inks will not cure with an LED. An Eco UV or an HUV ink will not cure with an LED. You have to have an ink which your ink formulator tells you has been specifically formulated for LED.
Okay. And just to get a better sense of this, what is unique about that formulation? I know LED light is in specific nanometer range. Is there a sweet spot there? Is that sweet spot growing in terms of curing? That's a lot of questions, but maybe we can take them one at a time.
I always like a very simple analogy. A normal UV lamp is like a shotgun. It's letting off UV light across the whole spectrum, a little bit all over the place. And so the photoinitiators in the ink react to all those different wavelengths. An LED is like a sniper rifle. It lets out a huge amount of energy, but only at one wavelength. And if your ink does not react to that exact wavelength, then you've got a problem and you won't cure. So you have to have an ink which is formulated at that sniper rifle, wavelength, and then it will cure great. Anything outside of that, your standard UV inks just won't work. That's the simple, simple explanation.
Yeah. And even if you're using everything Rob said is spot on. And if you are using a conventional mercury ink with an LED system and to your eyes it appears to be reacting and curing, you shouldn't be using it. Work with your supplier to either get an LED specific formulation or a dual cure, which is formulated for LED but is also backward compatible with mercury.
Okay. And then I guess I would just ask very quickly, Nick, Brad, and David, in terms of finding a UV LED curable ink that worked with the system, was that challenging? Was it easy? Did you just work with the GEW team to find something?
I'll start out by just saying that there has never been more an exciting time in ink manufacturing than the creation of LED. As soon as that came out, I guarantee you I had somebody here at Push Solutions literally on a bi-weekly basis selling LED UV ink. We did partner with one of the leaders in it, and that was brought to the table by our equipment supplier and obviously GEW. They don't obviously pick a specific one, but they did give us a list of who's out there and on the leading edge of the development. And we've stuck with them just due to them being an early adopter in that industry. But just about everybody out there right now, this is the hottest development, like Jennifer said, in offset printing. And the suppliers that supply all of our consumables are hot on the trail for this because this is the newest thing that's come around in the last, I can't even say how long, 15, 20 years. So you're not going to, as somebody's going to adopt this technology, you're not going to be short on people knocking on your door. But talking to other GW users, whether in your marketplace or throughout your area, they will be able to help get you to somebody who is a reliable supplier for your company. And that's what we found.
Okay. Yeah, David, quickly, anything on that?
I would just say that your press consumables are as important as the lamp. You need to get the right consumables that work for you. For us, because we do a lot of specials, you've also got to understand that you can't mix a special color out of a Pantone book. You have to have an LED recipe, and then you have to hope that you get to the Pantone number. Some manufacturers are much better than that than others. We've trialed an awful lot of them, and we've got 2 very good suppliers now for LED ink, but you need to do some research, you need to find the right stuff for you, and you need to put some effort into that to get it to work.
Okay, thank you. Well, it seems like we've covered a whole bunch of ground on UV LED today, but we're coming up on the end of our hour. So on behalf of Printing Impressions and GEW, I want to thank all of you for being here today and for attending today's webinar. We hope it was interesting and informative and helped you get a better sense of what a retrofit would be like and if it's right for your business. So be sure to check out our webinar page coming up for information on archived and upcoming webinars. And then if you would take just a minute to fill out the brief feedback survey that will come up on your screen once you log off of this program, we would much appreciate it. It helps us make better programs for the future. So with that, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again at the next Printing Impressions webinar. So long.